Dobra večer i dobrodošli u Agendu Svijet. U petak i subotu, dakle 2 dana, održavaju se parlamentarni izbori u Češkoj. Poslovično, mirna i stabilna zemlja bi nakon vikenda mogla biti zahvaćena ozbiljnim političkim previranjima. Trend rastućeg euroskepticizma i neizravne posljedice rata u Ukrajini opterećivali su kampanju. Kako bismo bolje razumjeli što su i zašto bile teme u kampanji i kako bi mogla izgledati češka politička stvarnost nakon izbora, pomoći će nam novinar uglednog češkog tjednika Refleks iz Praga, kolega Oliver Adamek. Welcome to our program, Mr. Adamek.
Thanks for inviting me. Good evening.
Good evening. Let us start with a report which will introduce us a little bit of what was promised to Czech voters in this campaign.
Sedamdesetjednogodišnji milijarder Andrej Babiš ponovno ima priliku postati češki premijer. Njegova populistička stranka nezadovoljnih građana vodi u anketama s oko 30%. Babiš obećava smanjenje poreza, veće plaće i mirovine, te kritizira dijelove europske politike, posebno zeleni plan imigracije.
Hnutí ANO ví a má zkušenosti s tím, že členství Evropské unii je především bojem za zájmy českých občanů a České republiky a obrana proti nesmyslům a regulacím přicházejícím z Bruselu.
Glavni izazivač je vladajuća desnocentristička koalicija Zajedno s 20% potpore. Predvodi je premijer Petr Fiala, koji se zauzima za smanjenje deficita, čvrstu potporu Ukrajini te proeuropska i proatlantska stajališta.
Se spolu udělá všechno proto, aby Česká republika zůstala bezpečným, demokratickým, evropským státem, pevně ukotveným v západních institucích.
Razlike su posebno izražene u vanjskoj politici. ANO se koristi retorikom Češka na prvom mjestu, kritizira zelenu agendu i prigovara da vlada previše troši na Ukrajinu i ukrajinske izbjeglice, kojih je u zemlji oko 500 000.
Ne budeme dodavati branje do Ukrajine, ne budeme.
Dio birača strahuje da bi pobjeda euroskeptičnih snaga mogla udaljiti Češku od Europske unije i NATO-a. Koalicija Zajedno se prikazuje kao jamac europske i transatlantske orijentacije s naglaskom na partnerstvo sa SAD-om i saveznicima u Europskoj uniji.
Mám naději, že tady je stále většina, které záleží na hodnotách svobody, bezpečí a demokracie.
No kod dijela građana prisutan je osjećaj da ih političari i vlasti i oporba zapostavljaju, što otvara prostor radikalnijim opcijama.
Jsem byl vždycky voličem ANO a tato vláda současná tady uvedla naši republiku do úplné devastace, zničila všechno, co mohla.
Mám trošku strach z extremistické vlády, která by Česko zavedla někam jinam, než si většina lidí přeje, to jest na západ.
Dneska jsem přišel, protože se obávám vývoje politické situace tady v naší zemi, podobně jako na Slovensku, podobně jako v Maďarsku.
Prvi blok čine manje stranke sklonije Babiševom ANO pokretu. Treća po snazi je krajnje desna, Sloboda i izravna demokracija s gotovo 14% potpore. Stranka Tomija Okamure, češko-japanskog podrijetla, traži referendum o izlasku iz Europske unije i zatvaranju granica. U parlament bi mogao ući ljevičarski blok Stačilo, predvođen komunistima, koji se zalaže za izlazak iz Europske unije i NATO-a te prekid pomoći Ukrajini.
Migrace nebude ohrožovat naše města ani naši kulturu. Vše má jediný cíl. Hospodařit tak, aby peníze byly, a za současné vlády musím i dodat, aby peníze zbyly pro Čechy, Moravany a Slezany. Ne pro cizí.
Řekli jsme, že utvoříme silný levicový vlastenecký blok proti Fialově vládě. Slíbili jsme, že žádný levicový hlas nenecháme propadnout.
Poseban fenomen su motoristi, desnopopulistička stranka s automobilom kao simbolom. Protiv su ukidanja motora s unutarnjim sagorjevanjem, odbacuju euro, migracije i klimatske politike, ali ne žele izlazak iz Europske unije i NATO-a.
Stát je potřeba opravit, aby nezanikl všedi unifikované Evropy. Chceme sebevědomou Českou republiku, odmítáme euro, odmítáme zrušení koruny, odmítáme vzdání se práva veta.
Na suprotnoj strani su partneri vladajućeg bloka, pokret Stan i Pirati. Stan okuplja gradonačelnike i regionalne inicijative, naglašava obrazovanje i modernizaciju. Pirati pak ističu digitalizaciju, transparentnost i građanska prava.
my nechceme zakonzervovat tuhle zemi. My tuhle zemi opravdu chceme posunout tam, kam patří. To znamená moderní evropská demokracie.
Já děkuji, že jste sem dneska přišli. Takže letos Piráti nakopneme změnu.
Češka politička scena je fragmentirana i podijeljena između euroskeptično-suverenističkog bloka predvođenog Babišem i prozapadnog bloka predvođenog premijerom Fialom, a koji ističe jasne stavove pro-EU, pro-NATO, jasna podrška Ukrajini.
Náš program, my tam máme tu zahraniční politiku, ale to není priorita. Priorita je život našich spoluobčanů a samozřejmě o tom jsme dneska mluvili, školství, zdravotnictví a další věci.
Hnutí ANO se, bohužel, hnutí ANO se nedá věřit. Je to strana založená a vedená obchodníkem, který za cestu k moci prodá cokoliv, včetně budoucnosti a bezpečnosti naší země.
ANO trenutačno ima prednost, ali velik broj birača i dalje je neodlučen. Ankete pokazuju da je velik udio glasova na klackalici, što daje potencijal manjim strankama.
So we saw, Mr. Adamek, give us, concerning all of this that we just heard, in your opinion, is Czechia heading towards change of ruling party or coalition? And in your opinion, what are the most likely options right now?
Most likely, yes. According to most of the projections, the chance for government change or the probability is very high, about 80-90%. And what will follow is probably government constructed by the former governing party ANO or YES movement of Andreja Babiša. The uncertainty is about who will be his partners. There are three possible parties. A movement constructed around Communist Party, then a right-wing motorist party, and a far-right populist SPD party. So, yeah, there are more options, but basically, all of these parties are more Eurosceptic and, for example, don't support the military support for Ukraine by Czechia.
So definitely, or most likely, let's say right now, that the new government will be Eurosceptic, but you mentioned that some of them are left, or quite left, and others are quite right, on the right. So how is this possible? What is connecting them at the moment?
Basically, what is connecting them is Euroscepticism, I would say. That's one thing. Another thing that these parties mostly have in common is that they would like to introduce general referendum option to Czech politics. Mainly two of them, Enough movement and SPD movement, would like to introduce a referendum about Czechia's membership in NATO and European Union. That would be a break point because Czechia never had such parties in government that would question the membership in EU and NATO. This time it's quite possible. And I would say that the parties that might come to government, what is connecting them is that they are all strongly opposed against the current government, and also all of them are in opposition to European Union. Yeah, they blame Brussels and European structures for the problems of Czechia, and they are climate skeptic and also not supportive of Ukraine.
Okay, let's talk about these problems of Czechia that you mentioned. You already mentioned some of the issues. What were the most dominant topics during this campaign, and how different is it from 4 years ago?
This time the campaign is more than ever before about international topics and foreign policy and international security of Czechia. Some parties say that, mainly the governing parties say that this must be ensured by strong membership in EU and NATO, and by strengthening the expenditures for military and for defense purposes. And the oppositional parties mostly claim that that basically the defense of Czechia is also important, but what was forgotten in the last years was the economic part of politics, and mainly the level of life, standard of life of Czech people. So that's basically the topic of the other part of the political spectrum. And within these economic issues, what is dominating is the cost of housing. Because housing in Czechia is compared to salaries the most expensive in the European Union. So that's what the opposition parties also are using a lot in the campaign.
Also, I heard that energy costs went up pretty significantly during this government reign, and I guess inflation, which also bothers Croatia, rise of prices altogether in the stores is also an issue.
Yes, for sure. There's one statistic that's used a lot by the opposition parties, and that is the real wages and the change of real wages in Czechia. And there is one statistic saying that Czechia had the biggest decrease of real wages in the last 5 years from all the EU countries. And basically that's what I would say that most of the voters feel on their expenses, that simply basically everything got much more expensive. But the thing is that the current government is telling the people that right now the most important thing is stay secure, stay safe in the international field, and to defend Czechia from threats, mainly from Russia. I would say that the campaign of the governing party Spolu, which means together, is even anti-Russian. I would say that the sentiment is really strongly against Russia. Yeah. So basically, the answer of the government is yes, we have some economic issues, but we tried what we could to fix that, and also we ensured security of Czechia by spending more on defense, mainly.
And just this one, this economic issue, they're fairly new, or it's going for years now, that the rise of housing, the rise of prices of energy, or this is something that is basically new?
The energy prices are an issue of last 3 or 4 years. Let's say from the time when this became an issue across all Europe, I would say. But the housing issue is something what's being on the table already 10 years, and none of the last 2 governments was able to change anything to at least slower down the increase of the housing prices. So that's also the biggest economic topic of this campaign. But at the same time, it's an issue that has been here with us for many, many years. Just this time, it got to be the biggest campaign issue because it's not anymore just an issue of big cities, Prague, Brno, and Ostrava, like before, but now the housing prices were skyrocketing also in smaller cities and in really basically all the regions. So that's why it became the central topic of the campaign.
When I looked into more details about parties that are running right now for parliament, I found out that some of these parties are fairly new, or many of them are actually fairly new. Some of them are founded in this decade, a couple of years ago. Then others, like the number 1 party, ANO, at the moment, is actually founded, I think, 14 years ago in the previous decade. So traditional parties are not doing well anymore. What happened? Who are the voters of these new options?
That differs in each of the cases. The ANO movement or the Yes movement, which is dominating the polls for last years, is called by many experts as the new Czech left, because the Social Democratic Party fell down in the last years, and most of the voters of this party transferred to this ANO movement. So that's the interpretation of this. And also, what was very strong in Czechia in the last, let's say, decade and a half was anti-corruption feeling and anti-corruption movement. That's what the ANO movement is building on. Then the SPD movement, Freedom and Direct Democracy, also in opposition, and the Pirate Party. All of these parties were developed in last 10 to 15 years. And for all of them, one of the biggest elements in the beginning was anti-corruption ethos. So that's something what was very strong at one time in Czechia, the feeling that there must come some new parties which are not full of corruption and economic criminality and stuff like this.
So basically a lot of anti-system sentiment, let's say, both on the left and on the right.
At the same time.
At the same
time. Yes.
Since all of this that we just heard from you, is it the fact that the high voter turnout is expected in these elections, or could this play a role? Are people more mobilized to go to the polls because of all of this?
This is quite uncertain because the last parliamentary elections had very, very high turnout. It was the highest in last 20 years. That was the last time. But this time, according to some of the surveys, it might be slightly lower because part of the government voters is disappointed by what the government was performing in the last years. So the voters of opposition are motivated for sure to come to the election. But what is a big question is the turnout of the people who voted for this government 4 years ago. That's the reason why some experts claim that this year the turnout is going to be smaller than last time. But it's hardly predictable also because what is also fact is that in the middle of this electoral term, there was a presidential election in 2023, and that had the highest turnout since the 90s in Czech Republic, among all elections, all types of elections. So personally, I don't like to guess about the turnout. There can be various things can happen, I would say.
Yeah, interesting. Until now, Czechia or Czech Republic was firmly in the camp of, let's say, Ukrainian supporters, countries that strongly support Ukraine resistance to Russian invasion. Could this change? You already said what you're expecting after the elections, which coalition or combinations of parties could emerge as a new government. And could you switch more towards the stance taken by Hungary and Slovakia in the past couple of years?
This is an important issue because that's what many people abroad expect from the government change in Czechia. I would say that the shift wouldn't be so hard as in Slovakia or to the direction of Hungary. Okay. I personally lived in Hungary for a certain time, and I speak Hungarian, and I can say that the atmosphere of Hungary and the media, the campaigns, and the statements of political parties are still far more anti-Ukrainian than in Czechia. The ANO movement, the leading party now in the polls, which probably will construct the new government, says that they would continue in support of Ukraine, even military support, only they would significantly decrease the cost of this because the priority should be the Czech people. That's what they claim. So it would be, Czechia would not be the leading supporter of Ukraine if the government changes. I would say it would rather move to the European average and look a bit more like some other European countries. Not really Slovakia and Hungary, I would say maybe like Austria, basically supporting Ukraine, supporting the sanctions, but not being so active in mainly in the military meetings.
Yeah, more neutral, let's say. Okay, we mentioned actually both of us Ukraine war. You harbored about 500,000 of Ukrainian refugees, I think, in Czech Republic. Did they influence the social and political balance in the country? Is this a topic in campaign? You said that the costs will be cut down probably, but other issues as well. do you feel the input of these issues in this campaign?
Mm-hmm. There are two interpretations or two narratives about this. One is the one that is constructed by opposition mainly, which is that too many refugees from Ukraine came, and that's what raised, for example, the housing prices. Mm-hmm. That's one part. But at the same time, the other side says that what the Ukrainian refugees add to the Czech Republic's budget only by taxes that they pay from their work is already more than what Czechia had to pay them as a support in the beginning when they came. So there are two interpretations of this, but from some of the polls, that there are many of them about Ukrainians and Czechia, and the Czech people's opinion about Ukrainians, I would say that stronger is the first feeling, that the refugees were too many and that they present too big burden for Czechia. That's the feeling of oppositional voters and maybe even some government voters. At the same time, Ukrainians are able usually to learn Czech very, very fastly. So even entrepreneurs and people from business say that the fact that they came saved their businesses in some points, because there was a lack of working power in some sectors, and the Ukrainians were, let's say, very, very helpful in this. Yeah, so there is a battle of two narratives, and we will see also in the elections which will win. But I would add one last thing, that the party that is usually third in the polls, the Freedom and Direct Democracy Party, which might get to the new government, has as their first campaign point, first program point, that they would make a major revision of all residence permits to Ukrainians in Czechia. Yeah? So, yeah, the anti-Ukrainian sentiments are strong, but there is also another narrative.
Yeah. Very recently, we had parliamentary elections in Moldova. Many months ago, presidential elections in that country as well. There were a lot of questions about foreign influence, mainly Russian, into these elections, and also about disinformation campaign. This is an issue since the rise of social networks in many European and not only European countries. What is the situation right now in Czech Republic and in this campaign? Obviously, this is a sensitive question in many democracies.
Mm-hmm. This year, the disinformation campaigns didn't influence the campaign as such that much, because when I compare it to previous elections in Czechia, in the previous elections, parliamentary or presidential, there used to be one big or two big misinformations that really changed the scope of the campaign. In the last presidential elections, it was a claim that one of the candidates, of the main candidates, would drag Czechia into the war in Ukraine. Before, it was disinformation about migrants very often in elections. This year, I even consulted this question with some political scientists from Czechia, and we agreed on that this year somehow the disinformations didn't really get that much to the spotlight, let's say. Yeah. So foreign influence is for a long time a strong issue in Czechia. But what I would say that is reason for this is that mainly the Russian influence decreased in the last years because the current government made many efforts to weaken this influence. For example, by sanctioning some Russian businesses in Czechia, even further than the EU did, and also by canceling some disinformation websites. Yeah, the Czech government for a certain time really banned dozens of websites which they called disinformation.
Interesting. Thank you very much, Mr. Adamek, and obviously interesting weekend is ahead of you.
Yes, we are sure about that.
Thank you very much
for inviting me.
Thank you. A hvala i vama, cijenjeni gledateljice i gledatelji. Bilo je to sve u ovoj agendi Svijet. Budite s nama idućeg tjedna. Do tada, doviđenja.